Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging into something truly fascinating, maybe a bit terrifying too. Shadow people.
Definitely leans towards terrifying for most people, I think.
Right. So, you've given us this incredible stack of sources, personal accounts, folklore, um, psychological takes on it
A
all.
real mix, yeah.
And our mission, like always, is to pull out the key insights, help you understand what these elusive figures might actually represent.
A big question.
We're talking about that really primal fear, that glimpse in the corner of your eye or just feeling
The
watched.
shivery feeling, yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. What are these spectral entities? What do they mean in the grand scheme of human experience?
Let's get into it.
So, when people talk about shadow people, it's striking how similar the descriptions are, isn't it? Almost universal.
It really is. You hear the same things again and again. Dark, humanoid shapes. Silhouettes, basically.
Like literal patches of shadow, but
Hmm,
moving with intent.
exactly. And witnesses often stress this defining thing. They seem blacker than black.
What does that actually mean, though? Blacker than black.
It means they seem to absorb light rather than just be in absence of it or reflect it.
Hmm.
It creates this weird visual paradox.
Like a 2D cutout.
Sort of, yeah, like a void, but people also get this disturbing sense of depth, of presence from them.
And crucially, they move on their own, right? Regardless of light sources.
That's a key point. It
Yeah.
suggests they aren't just tricks of light and shadow, points to some kind of autonomy, maybe non-physical.
And the lack of features, that's
Yeah,
got to be part of the terror. No eyes, no mouth.
absolutely. Makes them feel utterly alien, menacing. Strips away any sense of connection or understanding.
But I've definitely read accounts, seen some in the sources you sent that mention exceptions, really chilling ones.
You mean the eyes.
Yeah.
Right. Some of the most frightening reports talk about glowing red or yellow eyes,
Yeah.
just floating in that blackness.
Yeah. That definitely amps up the malevolence factor. It's just
Mhm.
intelligence, maybe hostility. And okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. The Hat Man.
Ah, yes, the Hat Man, a classic archetype in this field.
The consistency is just wild, isn't it? Tall, shadowy guy, old-fashioned fedora maybe, or a trench coat, but no face you can make out.
It's remarkable. Across different cultures, different times, people describe this same figure. It suggests something deeper than just individual hallucination.
Like a shared archetypal thing.
Possibly, yeah. It really makes you wonder.
Though it's not always humanoid, right? Some quartz are. Weirder.
Oh, definitely. While the humanoid shape is common, you also get accounts of amorphous blobs of shadow, swirling masses, sometimes distorted figures that just defy physical reality.
Which somehow makes them even more non-human, more disturbing.
Exactly. And that ties into their lack of physicality, too. They rarely seem solid, often described as two-dimensional, like a ripple or a hole in the air.
Intangible. Can't be touched.
Right. And they don't cast their own shadows, which is another paradox. They are the shadow in a sense.
So we've got this chilling appearance, but how they move, or maybe how little they seem to move sometimes, that's just as creepy.
It really is. The movement is often described as unnervingly rapid, darting,
Or
gliding.
without footsteps or sound.
Usually, yes.
Yeah.
Silent movement. And it can seem to pass right through solid objects, walls, doors. Reinforces that non-corporeal idea.
And they appear and disappear instantly.
Yeah, just poof, gone. Or they melt into the shadows. Or you look away, look back, and they're not there. And it leaves people feeling completely disoriented,
Psychologically drained, I bet, questioning everything.
profoundly.
Okay, so let's shift to the circumstances. When and where do people actually see these things? This is where it gets really fuzzy, that line between paranormal and, well, maybe psychology or physiology.
That's a crucial point. And what's fascinating is how often sightings happen in peripheral vision.
Just out of the corner of your eye.
Exactly. A flicker. Something dark moves, you turn to look, and nothing's there.
That classic, did I just see something moment?
Right. And this links into things like pareidolia, our brain's tendency to see patterns like faces in clouds. Here, it might be seeing figures in ambiguous shadows.
Which makes sense, given most encounters happen at night or in dimly lit places. Hallways, bedrooms.
Perfect environments for shadows and for the brain to perhaps fill in the blanks. But for the people experiencing it, it feels very real, very deliberate.
Not just a random shadow.
No, they report a distinct presence.
And then there's the big one, sleep paralysis.
Ah, yes. A huge number of these encounters are linked to sleep paralysis, that terrifying state where you're awake, conscious, but you can't move or speak.
Usually happening when you're falling asleep or waking up.
Precisely. Hypnagogic or hypnopompic states. And during these episodes, vivid hallucinations are incredibly common. Often it's a feeling of a malevolent presence in the room.
Like someone standing over the bed or even sitting on your chest. The old hag thing.
Exactly that archetype. Or, very often, the Hat Man is reported during sleep paralysis. The sheer terror and helplessness of being paralyzed just amplifies the whole experience tenfold.
It really makes you question consciousness, doesn't it? What's real when your brain is in that state?
It absolutely does. And beyond sleep paralysis itself, just simple sleep deprivation or extreme exhaustion can trigger hallucinations too. Visual, auditory, it impacts perception directly.
So being overtired could make you see things.
It can certainly lower the threshold. The brain struggles to interpret sensory input correctly. Add in intense stress, anxiety, trauma.
Makes you more susceptible.
Heightened emotional states can definitely make individuals more prone to misinterpreting things, especially ambiguous stimuli in low light, as threatening. Fear responses get amplified.
And I notice many accounts happen when people are alone.
Yes, that sense of isolation and vulnerability seems to be a common factor.
What about places? Is there a link to locations with, like, bad vibes?
There's anecdotal evidence, certainly. People report seeing them more in places associated with negative events. The question is, are the entities drawn there, or does the environment itself create a psychological state more receptive to seeing them? Hard to say.
Then we should mention substances too, right?
Definitely. Drug use or withdrawal, especially stimulants or things like deliriants, can directly mess with brain chemistry and induce very vivid hallucinations, including shadow figures.
So it's not always paranormal or just exhaustion. There can be medical factors.
That's vital to consider. Certain neurological conditions, Parkinson's, some forms of dementia, migraines with aura, even epilepsy can cause visual hallucinations that might manifest as shadowy figures. It's due to disruptions in normal brain function, always worth ruling out.
Okay, so experiencing this is clearly deeply unsettling, leaves you feeling scared, maybe crazy. What should someone actually do if it happens immediately?
Right, immediate well-being first. The advice often given, though hard to follow, is try not to feed it with fear. Many reports suggest they thrive on it.
Easier said than done when you're terrified.
Absolutely. If it's sleep paralysis, focus all your mental energy on moving something small, like a finger or a toe. That can sometimes break the paralysis.
And if you can move.
Turn on the lights. Illumination often makes them vanish instantly. And if possible, get around other people. Their presence seems to diminish the entity's power or presence.
Keep a rational mindset if you can. Remind yourself of the possible explanations.
Yes, grounding yourself in potential psychological or physiological causes can help dial down the panic, even if it doesn't fully explain the experience for you.
Beyond the immediate moment, what about ongoing self-care? Especially if it keeps happening.
Good sleep hygiene is critical, given the links to sleep paralysis and deprivation. Regular schedule, dark, quiet room, avoid screens and caffeine before bed. The usual stuff, but really important here.
Managing stress, too.
Yes, mindfulness, meditation, therapy, anything that helps manage stress and anxiety could potentially reduce the likelihood of these experiences, especially if they're stress triggered.
And be honest about substance use.
Crucial. If that might be a factor, seek professional help. And, importantly, if sightings are frequent, persistent, or really bothering you, see a doctor. Rule out underlying medical or neurological issues.
Now, for people who lean more towards a paranormal or spiritual worldview, what approaches do they take?
There's several common strategies based on belief systems. One is commanding the entity to leave, verbally, forcefully.
Like, get out!
Yes, often invoking a higher power or asserting personal authority over their space. You are not welcome here, that kind of thing.
Prayer or affirmations.
Also very common. Reciting protective verses, affirming positive energy, visualizing a shield of light, whatever resonates with their belief system.
What about cleansing the space, like
Yeah.
smudging?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Using sage, Palo Santo, blessed water, certain resins, often with clear intention setting to clear out negative energy.
Setting boundaries seems key, too.
Yes. Clearly communicating, verbally or just mentally, but forcefully, that the entity isn't welcome and has no permission to be there. And if things persist and are really disturbing, people might seek help from spiritual leaders, paranormal investigators, or energy workers they trust.
Okay, we've talked about what they look like, when they appear, but the massive question, the one that keeps people debating, is what are they? Where do they come from?
The origin question. This is where the theories really diverge, and you see echoes in ancient myths worldwide.
So theory one.
Interdimensional beings. The idea is they're entities from another reality or dimension that somehow bleed through into ours occasionally.
That would explain the sudden appearances, the intangibility.
Precisely. It fits with their seeming disregard for our physical laws. Are they observers? Are they lost? Trapped? Who knows? What's fascinating is how this mirrors old myths about beings from parallel realms, like the jinn made of smokeless fire who could interact with our world.
Chilling thought, them just popping in from somewhere else. What else?
Another idea is there's some form of residual energy, or maybe spirits, but distinct from ghosts as we usually think of them.
Like an imprint.
Could be. Psychic imprints from intense emotions or events, or maybe disembodied consciousnesses that haven't maintained a full identity. They feel more like a generalized presence, maybe like the ancient Greek concept of a shade, just an echo.
Not a specific person's ghost?
Generally not, no.
No.
Then, more esoterically, you have the idea they might be creations of the human mind.
How so?
Either through something like conscious astral projection, where someone is perceiving things from outside their body, or perhaps more unsettlingly, as involuntary thought forms.
Thought forms, like tulpas.
Exactly, sometimes called tulpas or egregores. The idea is strong collective emotion, especially fear or intense belief, could inadvertently manifest these things into some kind of quasi-reality. Suggest our minds might have a power we don't fully grasp.
Wow. Our own fear is literally taking shape.
It's a potent concept. Then, from a more religious or spiritual angle, they're sometimes seen as minor malevolent entities, demons, negative spirits.
Intent on causing fear.
Yes, their oppressive nature, the dread they inspire, those occasional red eyes, it all fits that interpretation for some believers, like a form of spiritual oppression.
And finally, the psychological take.
The Jungian shadow archetype. This is the idea that these figures are externalizations of our own repressed stuff. Desires, fears, parts of ourselves we reject. Our inner turmoil projected outwards as a menacing shadow figure. It becomes a symbol of needing to integrate those hidden parts of ourselves.
So many possibilities. Which brings us to intent. What do they want? That seems to be the most baffling part. They often just stand there.
It is baffling. Unlike many ghost stories where there's a goal unfinished business, a message shadow people often seen focus purely on observation and instilling fear.
Just watching.
That's the most common report. Standing in a corner at the foot of the bed, just watching. Chilling, but not always overtly aggressive. Leads to the theory they might be dispassionate observers.
But then there's the darker take that they feed on fear.
Right. That the observation is the aggression, designed to generate negative emotions like fear and dread, which witnesses often report feeling completely drained by afterwards, energetically or emotionally depleted.
Is that a common feeling?
Very common, yes. And some older folklore does paint them as harbingers of bad luck or misfortune, although that's less common in modern accounts.
So mostly terrifying, occasionally neutral, almost never helpful.
That seems to be the overwhelming consensus from the accounts, yeah. And their fleeting nature usually suggests they're transient, not like a typical haunting tied to one place for years, more like brief, disturbing visitors.
Okay, let's make a crucial distinction here. Shadow people versus ghosts. People sometimes lump them together, but they seem quite different, right? Understanding the difference feels key.
It's absolutely key. They occupy a distinct and often, as you said, more frightening niche.
So difference number one, appearance.
Big difference. Shadow people are that pure, solid darkness, blacker than black, void-like, often seen peripherally, darting away. Movement is gliding, maybe through objects.
There's ghosts.
Ghosts have a much wider range. Full-bodied apparitions that look like people, maybe translucent. Misty forms, orbs of light. You might see features, clothes. They can be seen directly, sometimes for longer periods.
And their fundamental nature, their origin.
Shadow people theories point away from deceased humans, interdimensional, astral, thought forms, maybe elementals or minor entities. There's that sense of them being fundamentally other.
Not Aunt Mildred's spirit.
Exactly. Ghosts, the core idea is they are the spirits of deceased people. They often have an identity, a history, a connection to a place or person.
And what they do, their intent and interaction.
Shadow people mostly observe, instill fear or dread. Communication is rare, usually just that feeling of oppressive presence. They don't usually seem to want anything specific from you, other than perhaps your fear.
Ghosts can be more interactive.
Much more varied. Residual hauntings are like recordings, no interaction. But intelligent hauntings involve entities that seem conscious, might try to communicate, respond to questions, move objects, sometimes seem friendly, sometimes not. They often have a purpose, even if it's just wanting acknowledgement. Shadow people feel. different, more alien, more focused on that primal fear response.
What a deep dive this has been. It really feels like the whole shadow people phenomenon weaves together so many threads, our psychology, that basic fear of the dark ancient myths.
It really does. You have these compelling, often terrifying personal stories on one hand, and then these strong psychological and physiological explanations on the other. Sleep paralysis, pareidolia, exhaustion.
It's a tangle.
It is. And regardless of what you ultimately believe, their origin is interdimensional, psychological, something else entirely we're saying. The impact on the people who experience them is undeniable. It's profoundly distressing.
Yeah, it shakes your sense of reality.
Definitely challenges it.
So, wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, the listener? I guess the really provocative thought here is that the consistency of these experiences, whether they're real entities or trips of the mind, tells us something profound.
What's the takeaway, do you think?
Maybe it's about the incredible power of our perception, our consciousness. Whether we're glimpsing another reality or externalizing our deepest fears, the fact that humans consistently perceive these shadowy figures, it just keeps pushing us to question the nature of reality itself.
And maybe to pay a bit more attention to what lurks or seems to lurk just at the edge of our vision.
Exactly. That enduring human capacity to sense the unseen. Food for thought, definitely.